So next session will be from Anastasia Gamick. So Anastasia is the co-founder and chief operating officer at Convergent Research. She's pioneering a new model for large-scale science projects called focused research organizations, which address neglected bottlenecks in biomedicine, biosecurity, climate technology, and other areas. So I'm personally very excited to learn more about FROs. So Anastasia, please take it away.
Thank you. Okay, so we created Convergent Research as a nonprofit science studio for pioneering focused research organizations, which are a new institutional model meant to build solutions to key infrastructure problems in science that remove bottlenecks to breakthrough research. We published a white paper in 2021, and I can happily tell you it's no longer a white paper. We now have 8 organizations with CEOs who are running their projects. They span math to climate to neurotech, and they're already showing results. E11 Bio is a high-throughput screening project. They're taking FDA-approved drugs, screening them against druggable targets, and they just dropped their first data release yesterday. Lean is an open source software for formal math. One of DeepMind's research papers that won the silver in the Math Olympiad heavily used Lean's resources. We're really inspired by projects like the Human Genome Project, the Large Hadron Collider, Hubble, which produced resources that were critical in accelerating their fields. But these large-scale projects are once-in-a-decade efforts that take tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, researchers coordinating across different institutional models, different government organizations. And we want to know how we can encourage more scientists and more researchers to build these tools that unlock science. And so we've proposed the Focused Research Organization. And we think that the same way that development of the word startup, this concept in Silicon Valley, led to an explosion of for-profit innovation, that we can have an explosion of nonprofit science organizations that are solving the most important problems for humanity. Okay, so we think that there's a gap in the R&D ecosystem. Effectively, academia is really great. I know that that's not always a popular thing to say, but I think that academia is really great at exploratory PI or researcher-led science. Startups have small coordinated teams that are really agile and can work through many different problems. Industry can solve big scaled solutions, but there's a gap around medium scale. So something like $20 to $50 million, engineering heavy, tightly coordinated projects that are producing public goods or producing goods that will take more than 10 years to come to market and generate returns for venture investors. FROs are meant to solve this exact hole. Okay, so what is a FRO? So we think of them as purpose-built organizations. So every FRO comes in with a 5-year technical roadmap and a goal at the end of that project. We think of them as time limited. We're not building a research institute that will last in perpetuity. There's a product, there's a tool, there's a data set that needs to be built, and we think that we can build it in a set amount of time. They're producing public goods that are technically hard. These aren't really simple engineering efforts. This is science. This is open-ended R&D. There are really open questions about whether or not these projects can succeed. And if they succeed, they will be highly impactful in their fields. They look like a startup. They're led by a CEO. They have teams of 10 to 30 people. And they do things that sound crazy in academia, but they have project managers who have quarterly OKRs. And then when one team drops their OKRs, everyone else thinks, hey, how do we reallocate resources within this organization? How do we pivot to make sure that we're hitting our overall milestones? What kinds of projects are they building? Thus far, we've seen them build a lot of tools or platform technologies, open source software, or big data sets. Every time one of our projects has come in, they've come in with a really clear definition of what they're going to build at the end of 5 years. I would love to hear from you guys at the end of this if there are ideas that aren't tools or data sets in particular. I'm really interested in projects in economics. I think that there are FRO-shaped projects there, and we haven't found them yet. We, Convergent Research, are particularly looking for projects that are highly impactful in that they unbottleneck entire fields. We're not looking for incremental project. We're looking for things that are really unlocking. And we are looking to, we're encouraged by everyone else who's building FROs. And we find our projects through a process that we called scientific road mapping. So let's imagine science is a technology tree. You have like a basic understanding of a concept like physics, and then you have an understanding of a platform technology, and then at the very end, there is an application that is impactful in the real world. Our projects are usually on that fundamental understanding or that platform technology level. Scientific road mapping looks like, hey, here are a bunch of end nodes that we think we could address. In this case, consciousness, psychiatric disease, neural nets, how might AI work? It would be really useful if we had an actual circuit map of the brain. How does your prefrontal cortex receive signals back from your amygdala that it uses to train itself? Okay, so then we have to be able to do this. Actually, like hundreds of millions or billions of dollars to build a map of a human brain. Can we make that mapping technology cheaper? One of the big expensive parts of this is proofreading. So actually, are we correct in all the ways that the different neural circuits work? One of the ways to solve this is through a technology called barcoding. You basically give every neuron its own barcode. There's another technology that's important called expansion microscopy. And we say, okay, here are key bottlenecks in the field. And then we propose an FRO that does exactly that. So E11 Bio is solving this technology problem for a bunch of end node one day, but today they're just building the platform technology that allows you to do neural circuit mapping much, much cheaper and faster. Okay, so we found a bottleneck. That's cool. This is a big problem. Turns out most projects don't come to us looking like an FRO. It's like, hey, here are a series of papers that we want to publish, or this is an area that we think is holding back science, and it's not a 5-year, $50 million effort led by a CEO with an engineering team and a multidisciplinary team of scientists. So we spend a lot of time working with the scientists and the people proposing the project about what that 5-year project would look like. What is the FRO they want to build? First, we want to make sure that it's actually really high impact, that when these projects launch, they fundamentally change their field. This isn't an incremental piece at one of the end nodes. And then we make sure it isn't best done in an academic lab. Sometimes these are studies or research papers that could get funded elsewhere. Sometimes this is actually best as a collaboration across many labs. And then we want to make sure that it can't be a for-profit. Turns out there's way more money in venture creation than there is in philanthropy. And so if you can do it as a for-profit, you should do it as a for-profit. And then we work with those founders to create this technical roadmap, really clear milestones that we can report back to our funders, that they can really use as a North Star for as they're building their projects. And then we do some peer review. We want to make sure that this is a highly impactful project and that it's physically possible. We don't necessarily want consensus. There is always the reviewer who says, actually, you should send me this money because it'll do better to do this in my lab. We still get those, even in our peer reviews. And once we have this really good idea outlined and targeted, so a really impactful project, it's definitely FRO shaped. That's not all of it. We have to work with our funders to really build trust that we're picking projects that are highly impactful, that it matches their thesis, that we're a good steward of their philanthropic funding. And we have to find founding teams. Sometimes a CSO will come to us. Sometimes a PI will be like, here's the project I want to solve. I'm not leaving my lab. And so we work to make sure that the whole founding team is in place to ensure a successful project. Convergent then launches these projects. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit. Each FRO is a subsidiary LLC. This is beneficial to them because they don't have to learn how to be a nonprofit. They don't have to do nonprofit accounting. They don't have to do grant reports. The things that they do is they build science, they work on partnerships, they work with users. Sort of along this line, we provide a lot of back-end infrastructure. We do their finance, their accounting, their HR. We have the former general counsel of OpenAI as RGC. And then we offer sort of like the YC style guidance where we work with these founders on, hey, actually, you're gonna have to fire people. I know that that sounds crazy out of academia, but you're gonna have to fire someone. Or how do they do OKRs or bringing in people to talk about partnerships? So we spend a lot of time helping them get the resources they need to culturally and operationally run their efforts. How's it going? So we've been doing this now for 3 years. We have 8 projects, and they're pretty exciting. So E11 Bio is this solution that we were talking about. This project came out of my co-founder's work, Adam Marblestone, in Ed Boyden's lab. He really wanted to do this, and he couldn't get all of the different postdocs and grad students to coordinate their efforts. And so we launched E11 Bio in 2021, and they are taking individual neurons, and they're coding them with different protein barcodes that fluoresce with different wavelengths of light. And so they're imaging all of these barcodes, or all of these neurons, so that they can identify what neuron in multiple different images is the same neuron. So imagine you take a bunch of slices of a brain, and one of those slices is damaged. Today, you couldn't connect the first image to the third image, but because each neuron is barcoded, you can say, oh, hey, this is, has barcode ABC. That neuron has ABC. They're the same image. And they, over the last couple of years, have been able to actually do this in mouse brains. And then they're able to use computer vision and algorithms to create a 3D map of the brain. This is an immense amount of work that we've done in the last 3 years that couldn't have been done in an equal amount of time in academic settings. This is led by a COO who has found experience in Silicon Valley at IndieBio. And actually, they were able to hire some of the leading researchers in their field, people who had really amazing, first author papers in Nature. Again, I know that's no one's favorite thing here. They were willing to leave their other roles to come do the most impactful science at this brand new organization, which 3 years ago, we were not sure that they would do. Turns out, people want to do the cool science. And now they're starting to think through, as we're building this technology, who are the users? What are the relationships that we're building? How do we get over this translation hurdle from in the lab into the world to get actual researchers and clinicians using our data? Another Neurotech project is Forest. And they are creating an implantable device to do read-write to the brain. They use ultrasound, so it is above, I was early at Neuralink, it is not that invasive. It is above the brain, but below the skull. And they're able to use ultrasound arrays to identify what brain activity is, and then they can actually also focus that ultrasound and activate individual circuits in the brain. It's kind of phenomenal. It's minimally invasive. It has higher resolution than an fMRI. The first immediate use case is that when you have epilepsy, they stick you in a bed, they put some electrodes in your brain, and they make you sit there for a week or a month as they identify exactly where you're epileptic, and then they go in and they ablate that circuit. This would allow you to walk around your daily life, continue as they do that same imaging. They could have been a startup that did just that. But instead of being that startup, they're building a platform technology to work with clinicians across a wide variety of clinical indications, OCD, neuropsychiatric diseases, other brain trauma diseases. I like this slide. So they launched at the beginning of this year, and they already have results incredibly cheaply and incredibly fast compared to some of the other efforts in the BCI space. A little bit, this is because they picked the right technology, but I'm very proud of this team. They're led by a team out of Caltech. They have clinical partners, and then again, they've been able to hire the best people in their fields. So what does actual success for an FRO look like? There's a 5-year technical goal. They're going to achieve that. But then from there, there's an idea of a scaled revolution or outsized impact. It is additional funding from federal sources. It is spin out for-profit companies. It is ubiquitously used technology. If everybody uses E11's brain mapping technology, they are a success. And for us, we're trying to pick as many of these highly impactful platform technologies or data sets as we can. Someone mentioned TTOs earlier. One of the things about being a nonprofit is that we have to have a TTO, and we're trying really hard to make sure that we do this the right way. What are the best uses of any one technology to be as impactful as possible? And we're really giving the founders a lot of control in that decision. We have a long list of projects that we think would be also incredibly impactful. We're working on road mapping efforts. We're working with the UK government right now on a project there, and we're looking to launch several more of these. Our goal is that we've created the technologies and the institutions that allow science to be limited by creativity instead of by institutional structures. As always, we're looking for new ideas. We're looking for new funders. There's a lot of new projects that we could be launching in this space.
Thanks for the amazing talk. I run a nonprofit and I come from venture-backed for-profit, so I can see the differences between the two. And one big one is incentivizing employees. Option pool refresh, right? Partaking in the financial success, which could be an unlimited upside, is a motivator for many to work at startup pace. How do you solve that problem, or do you even see that problem?
It's interesting. I think that we have seen this problem in theory and not in practice. So all of our FROs comp on a cash level very similar to a Series A Silicon Valley startup. And so everyone coming from academia is thrilled. We have designed a couple possible models for how you would tie impact and work to compensation. We have a notion of a licensing sharing agreement. So you could offer shares of a license the same way that you would offer options. We're picking projects that we think are intentionally public goods. And so therefore, there's actually not that much value sometimes to capture. I think that there are other options too. If you work on one of these platform technologies, you're likely the person best placed to create the spin-out startup. If you're building a big data set, you understand, so E11 Bio is creating this data set of hits, right, of all of the intentional and unintentional places that a drug is hitting in human receptors. If you really understand that data, when you want to use that for an AI drug discovery company, or you want to use that for filing a secondary use patent, you might be the best person to create that company also. I think this is something else we're seeing. Our founders tend to be scientists. And there are scientists who have had a problem that they want to solve in academia for years, and they cannot solve in their labs. And so they're leaving to create the FRO because that is they want to solve that problem. And so actually in practice, we haven't had to do this because everyone is so excited to work on the project they want to be working on and being compensated fairly to work on this really impactful project.
Round of applause for Anastasia.